So what we're going to do tonight is we're going to take the first section, Ecclesiastes Reflection Prompt, and that is what we're going to cover tonight. This is the first section that we're going to have, so it'll look like this. Okay, do you see how it is?
Yes.
Okay. Now, I'll give you just a general overview of what we're going to do and how long it's going to take. It's going to take us into the time after Christmas to, in our second session, to get to the conclusion of all this. But our conclusion is going to be what is next, what is in mind for us from the Lord. And so you say, well, let's jump right into it now. I want to know what heaven is like. Well, the purpose of our Bible study, because that's what Scripture does, is it's a study. The reason for our study is so that we can see how all these things develop over a period of a long time, probably some maybe 1,000 years before the time of Christ, and then into the present, and then into the New Testament, and then current reflections on all this. So the first thing I want you to do is to look at this first page. It says Ecclesiastes Reflection Prompt. Now, if you have a study Bible by any chance, you don't need it now, but during the week you might want to do some reading or study. And if you have a Bible study program, a study Bible, like I have one from the New American Bible, and what it does is it gives you a lengthy source of information at the beginning of the books, hundreds of pages of material on the books in the Bible. So that's the benefit of having something like this. See, in other words, the Bible doesn't start till later here, but in this first section you have several hundred pages of explanation. So each book of the Bible, 73 of them, each book has kind of a recap. So if I was going to look at this and I see that I'm going to be looking at Ecclesiastes, I would open it up to this study Bible and I would find that. Okay, so I just want to mention that to you, that there are resources where you can inform yourselves of the scripture that we're studying beyond the material that I give you by taking a look at these introductions. They're very helpful. Now, what you can see on this Ecclesiastes Reflection Prompt, these are the type things that we can actually answer or comment on when we get finished with tonight. So I give it to you ahead of time. It's the very first page. And what it does is it gives you some statements here. Like, for example, comment on there's nothing new under the sun and you can't take it with you. Second, how does the quester feel about the major themes of human life? Does he feel the 5 listed have a satisfying meaning for himself? Comment on the antinomies. These things should be all kind of very strange to you now. You don't know what I'm talking about, but that's okay because we will know something about each one of these when we get done tonight. Now, all of our pages are back to back because of the fact that we want to respect the fact that we're not charging much here to get these things printed. And if we took them to Kinko's or something like that, it cost us a huge expense. So we're doing our stuff here and we're using our paper and our folders. Stephanie went out and got all these binders. Then she got all this stuff printed up, and then she got it all assembled with these paper clips and put it all into books for us. So let's have a round of applause for Stephanie. There you go. Okay. All right. It's too loud. It's too loud. It's too loud. So, well, let's turn then the page, and here's the first page, and then here's the second page. Now, what I do with each one of these sections that we're going to be dealing with is I have a how to read. So all you have to do is take the first page, turn it over, and you have on the back side, and it says how to read the book of Ecclesiastes. That's the name of the book that we're going to be reading, is Ecclesiastes. And I'll just read a sentence or two to get us into it. It says, hello, crowd of viewers. I come before you with some hot coffee and snacks and put them aside to feast on the word of God, which is always sweet refreshment. So we're going to spend our first text in the presentation on eschatology. That's what the theme of our program is, eschatology. That's not only that we might not know it, but we might not know how to spell it. But eschatology means the things that happen after we die. In other words, what is it that's next in line for us? And we want to know by looking at the Jewish scriptures, is there any kind of a connection between ourselves and God? We will not find a resurrection in the Jewish scriptures until about 180 years before the time of Christ. They talk about an afterlife. Other than that, we do not have a statement in the Jewish scriptures about what happens to us after death. We die. And when we die, everything dies with us. There is some commentary that moves us into a place called Sheol, which is underneath the earth. And it's a terrible place. It's not hell, it's just a terrible place. You can go on living, but you're not really living. It's like the movie, you know, that when you saw the TV a couple of years ago and the big, you know, star thing about The Walking Dead. That's what these people look like in Sheol. So it says we're going to spend our first text in the presentation on eschatology, the things of life in the beginning of the next and final moments of existence, which are eternal. Then we're going to revise them. So this is kind of like an introduction to the whole thing. So if you read this page before we come in next week, you'll have kind of a summary. So you don't have to take a lot of notes. You'll be kind of like a summary of what we're dealing with tonight. So I'm going to put that page down now. That's page 2. And then we got the next page is this. It is the page that deals with the book of Ecclesiastes. And as you can see, things are in columns. And you can also see that there are annotations. The annotations are in the, you know, either in the columns themselves or that they explain stuff that we're referring to. This is so, again, you don't have to take notes that you're just looking at text. Also, I can tell you that we're going to read through the entire book tonight. You say, whoa, we'll be there till midnight. No, because we're not going to read every word. I have taken and underlined the things that I think are important for us to have. So you can see on these pages here, you can see things that are underlined and then some written things. And so those are the, paying attention to those, we actually end up with the amount of material we want. And then we go to the next page, the next page, the next page. So we will get through the 12 chapters tonight. We're not going to read everything because that wouldn't be any sense to us because we'd want to know what are the important things. So now, first of all, we have the name of the book. It's called Ecclesiastes. And the translation that I'm using is not the usual one like we would read on Sundays or for other, you know, Bible studies. This is a book that was written by scholars who wanted to put it into modern language. Now, the reason for that is it makes it a little bit easier for us to read because the old languages, when they translate, you know, they translate them kind of authentically. And but here what we have is kind of using our words that would appeal to us. We'll get to that in just a minute. Now, who wrote this book? Well, we don't know. We have it attributed to Solomon. Solomon was David's son. And Solomon was, of course, supposed to have wisdom. God asked him, what do you want in life? And he said, I want to have understanding. Well, that's pretty good because he was the king of Israel. And you'd think that he would have wanted more wealth and more property and more conquest. Instead, he says, give me understanding. But he really is not the author of the book. That is 950 years before Christ. This book is composed somewhere around, well, let's give a rough, around 400 before Christ. And its author is not known. But so it's not that. So they named a person named Koheleth, and Koheleth. And the way that our contemporary translation calls it is not Koheleth, but the quester. So that's where you say, oh, that sounds like asking questions. I think you're onto something because here we're not going to get too many answers. There's no afterlife in Jewish thought at this time, by the way. So there's no thought that we are going to live on. When we die, we die. You say, well, what about our memory, all the stuff we've accumulated? Well, that goes to your family. So the real remembrance of you might be of some people who could, know you and then think of you often. But as the days go by, you become just part of a family tree. So what we're going to do is to start to read this now. And I'm going to read mainly the underlined sections. And the thought pattern here is going to astound you. It's going to say that there really isn't any meaning in life beyond what we can discern for ourselves. I have some things here. I hope they're not confusing. You can see up on the top where it says A is to B. See that? A is to B. B is to C. Therefore, A is to C. Like apple is to fruit. Fruit is to tree, so therefore apple is to tree. The apple comes from a tree. You see how that goes? So here is the section that you want to pay attention to. See where it has a circle A, a circle B, and a circle C. Here is the whole of the structure, the skeleton of the book of Ecclesiastes. All toil, that means all the things that are on earth, all our work, our enjoyments and everything. Under the sun means on planet Earth. And all things under the sun, okay, the things on planet Earth, is vanity. Vanity means has no meaning to us. Momentary joy or happiness, but no lifelong things. So, and then all toil is vanity. So all toil is under the sun. All under the sun is vanity. So all toil is vanity. If I'm making some sense to you, because this does not make sense, what it's saying is that all the things that we work for, all the things that we do that are in under the sun are useless. Vanity, that's what vanity means. Now, how does this modern day translation talk about this? Take a look over on the left-hand side, right underneath the word vanity in number 1, and it says smoke. Nothing but smoke. That's what the Quester says. There's nothing but smoke. It's all smoke. In other words, our life is all kind of like a mirage. He says, what's there to show for a lifetime of work? Nothing but smoke. Next thing I have underlined, there's no changes. There's no improvement. Everything business as usual. Then the next thing I have underlined is this. All the rivers flow into the sea, but the sea never fills up. Let's say you die and now you are part of the water of the river. You are not distinct from the river, and the river goes into the sea, and the river is gone. How do you say that? Well, it's gone. It gets into the sea. Well, where is it in the sea? Well, it's gone. And so that's an analogy that this author of Ecclesiastes is saying. And so he says, next to the thing that's underlined, what was will be again. What happened will happen again. There's nothing new on this earth. You have to pay very careful attention to that statement there. There is nothing new under the earth. It's very important for us to know that. What is the last line of the Bible? The last lines. Jesus in the book of Revelation says, I will make all things new. So I've given you the answer. So this is like the big question mark of our existence, which is what is going to happen that's new? And according to Ecclesiastes, there's nothing that's new. Well then, what are the things that are under the sun? What are the things that we do? Now this is in the middle of your page. I wrote it out myself so you can see that. Do you see where it says quotation marks under the sun? So these are the lifestyles. These are the things we do. Well, there's wisdom. We try to know things. Pleasure. Well, that's good. We like to be, have our dopamine or whatever it is in our head, give us pleasure. Power and riches. Well, that's always nice to have enough to get by on. Altruism, which is sharing our goods with others. And a naturalistic religion. Naturalistic means there is no personhood to God. God is an aesthetic that is a creator, but he doesn't care about us. You can see, am I making some sense that what we're doing is we're reading the page here by looking at things I've underlined and by the commentary. And so what do we mean by religion that is naturalistic? It means this. It's like Thomas Jefferson was a great proponent of this. He even cut stuff out of the Bible. So this is all he would have was the sayings of Jesus, nothing of the miracles, because they imply power of the God. Instead, what he wanted to do was to just show us that there is a kind of a creator. We had to come from somewhere. They're not denying God. He mentions God a lot of places here. He's not denying God. He just says God doesn't care about us. This is the old-fashioned idea that God is like a jeweler who winds up a clock, puts it on the shelf, and the clock ticks away, and that's it. It's over. So now I'm going to go to the bottom of the page where it says, I've seen it all, and it says, call me Quester. I've been king over Israel in Jerusalem. I looked most carefully into everything. I searched out all that's done on earth, and let me tell you, there's not much to write home about. God hasn't made it easy for us. I've seen it all, and there's nothing but smoke. Everything is smoke, spitting into the wind. Are you getting a little bit depressed about reading all this? That our life is spitting into the wind, that we're all smoke. That's what's going to happen with us. We're going to evaporate. We're going to flow into a sea, and to be gone. There's nothing remaining of us. Are you getting a little depressed about that? Are you thinking that my existence, my ego, my sense of history, my love of life, they're all going to be gone? In other words, you got nothing left, absolutely nothing left. I told the group this morning the famous old story, you've heard it a thousand times, about the rich man with all his gold and his stocks and watches and all these jewels. And he says to his wife, I want everything to be buried with me. I'm taking it all with me, all my wealth. I'm taking it with me. It's coming with me. So sure enough, the wife understood what he meant, that she had to go and put all the gold and the jewels and everything else in the coffin. So they get out there to the cemetery. They open up the coffin lid, and it's time for her now to place all the wealth into his coffin. And so she stands there with her checkbook, and she writes out a check for billions of dollars, puts it right into the coffin, and they bury it. So she's done what he asked for, which was to take away
Never heard that.
everything. So it's an old story. Thank you for laughing. Now I know you're there. So let's take a look at these ideas that we have here. Like, for example, let's go up to the right-hand side there. Chapter 2. I said, let's go for it. Let's experiment with pleasure. That's one of the 5 things, is pleasure. Correct? Yes. Thank you.
Yes.
So what do I think of the fun-filled life? Insane, inane. My verdict on the pursuit of happiness? Who needs it? Well, we like to be happy, but after a while, if you just walk around with a smile on your face happy, sooner or later you get tired of that. So anyway, and he says, with the help of a bottle of wine and all the wisdom I can muster, I try my level best to penetrate the absurdity of life. So, okay, now, I don't want to hear any refrigerator doors out there, by the way. So he says, oh, I did great things. Oh, well, this is probably going to be power. See, this is if it was Solomon. I did great things. I built houses, planted vineyards. I brought slaves, male, female, piled up silver and gold. I took all the loot. I got all the money in the world. Is he happy with that? No. After a while, it gets tired. The next thing down at the bottom, I hate life. Then I took a good look at everything I've done, looked at all the sweat and hard work. But when I looked, I saw nothing but smoke and spitting into the wind. There's nothing to any of it, nothing. But I took a look at what's smart and what's stupid, what's left to do after you've been king. That's a hard act to follow. And he says, all I did was just to be a little bit smarter than everybody else. The smart ones see where they're going, and the stupid ones grope in the dark. They're all the same in the end. One fate for all, and that's it. In other words, you can have the smartest of people, and you can have the dumbest of people, and they're all going to end up the same. What is that? Dead. So he says, one fate for all, and that's it. He says, so why bother being wise? It doesn't get you anywhere. It's all smoke, nothing but smoke. Now, imagine this now. We're reading something that's 2,400 years old. And it's got these words and this amount of quote unquote wisdom in them. It's trying to get into a mindset of somebody back then who was listening to this. And they say, well, I know that when we die, we're over with. But then what should I do in between now and the time that I die? How should I live? Now, these are people before, to knowing that God could be personal or look out after us personally.
What if I found on my tablet?
I'm sorry? Oh, okay, well, I'll just continue. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn this page over to the backside. See how this goes? So on the backside, you have chapters 3 and chapter 4. Now, he says, I hate life. He says, I'm just going by underlying things. I can't take it with me. I have to leave it to whoever comes after me. Whether they're worthy or worthless, they're going to take what I got. We die. He says the best you can do with your life is have a good time. Get by the best you can. That's divine fate. We feast or fast, it's up to God. God may give us wisdom and knowledge and joy, but sinners are assigned to a life of hard labor, end up turning their wages over to God. Nothing but smoke spitting into the wind. Nobody's better off than anybody else. So pleasure is licit. That means it's approved. Cheerfulness, yeah, that's good. It's good to walk around with a smile to others. It's good just to be happy, but you're going nowhere. So I put down, my thing was that if you live life this way, it's kind of frustrating. You say, I'm doing all my stuff in life, but what for? I want to go somewhere after I die. I want what I make out of this life to be in the next life. It's transitory, meaning it's, what does the Bible say? Four score, a score is 20 years, so to be 80 years old, that'd be a good life. And it's mysterious, which means I can't figure it out. There's no kind of definite plan to my life, so I just try to do the best you can. Now, here's something, and if you have attended family funerals or other funeral ceremonies, you might have come across this text. It's from Ecclesiastes. It's kind of a secular text because what it does is they call these antimonies. That is, they are opposites. They're like parentheses. They block off everything. So let's take a look at the first one. There's a time for birth, the beginning of life. Anything before birth? No. And another for death. Well, the end of life. Is there anything after that? No. So these are the antinomies. Is there a time of plant? Yes. And another time to reap. So you plant the seed, then you reap. And there's a time to kill and a time to heal, time to destroy, time to construct, time to cry and to give life. So it's almost like saying these are kind of like all the aspects of life. Time to cry and a time to laugh, time to lament and a time to cheer. How about those bears, 5 and 1? Oh, so that's okay, a time to cheer, right time to make love and another to abstain, time to embrace, another time to part, time to search, time to count your losses, time to hold on, another to let go. So all of these things are opposites to each other. So if you go through this whole, this is poetry, you say, that sounds very poetic. It's kind of a beautiful way to look at life. And you're actually right, that's exactly what it is. Description of the wonderful things of life. Now I'm going to go down to the bottom paragraph. And do you see where I have an X in the bottom paragraph? You see that X there with a circle? Then you see an X up on in the space that's above it. Okay, I'm going to relate those two X's to each other. Let's start to read. He says, in the end, does it really make a difference when anyone does? I've had a good look at what God has given us to do busy work mostly. So he's saying, I'm not here to build pyramids or to build other type things because they're going to be gone too. How many wonders of the ancient world were there? 7. How many remain? 1. The pyramids. The others are all gone. The great library at Alexandria with the lighthouse. The statue outside of the Bay Area, the great big huge statue, the temple of Zeus, the Hanging Gardens of Babylon, the mausoleum, all these things that were the ancient things, the great temple in Ephesus to Diana, to the goddess of the moon. They're all gone. And even the pyramids aren't doing too well. All the beautiful white granite that was on the outside of them is gone. They stole it. So let's take a look at this reading. It says, look at underline. This is a very important passage I'm going to tell you now. So get ready for something significant. True, God made everything beautiful in itself and in its time. Well, that's a beautiful statement. He made everything beautiful in itself and in its time. In other words, nothing has to happen to the life. Everything is beautiful as it is. The flowers, the cosmos, and everything. So it's wonderful. Now, however, there is something that's missing from this sentence, and it's the fault of the translator. They skip a sentence that belongs in here, and it makes all the difference in reading this book. And so I put it in there for you. See where it has an X? It says chapter 3, verse 11. God also sent eternity into the human heart. If you read other translations of this text, like, for example, if I was going to read one from the Catholic Bible, from the New American Bible, I would get what I put down here. God also put eternity into the human heart. Now, this will require some explanation, but that's why I'm here. First of all, this statement tells us that the book of Ecclesiastes is not as well organized as it could be. There are several different translations of it that shift around some of the chapters. I'm sorry to tell you that. You think, oh, well, this should have been all organized and agreed upon. Well, it took them a long time to put it together. And so some of the things so this was left out. Now, so here's my learned opinion. Somebody came along and reading Ecclesiastes, and it gets into this mood that there is nothing after life. We are all going to die and go nowhere. And so that is the statement. So this person gets a little bit peeved because they're going to put this book into the Bible. And so this particular person is going to say, I'm not going to let them put something into the Bible that tells us that life is useless and we're going nowhere and we're going to die and we're a river into the sea. So what I'm going to do is to put down a stronger truth that we know from our other scriptures, which is that God has put into us a desire for eternity. Whoa, is that different than what we've been reading so far? Isn't that incredible? It's like a reversal. In other words, it says that what we're going for is to live forever. And I believe strongly, and other scholars do too, that this was placed there after the book was completed so that when they published it, that it would have this sense that, oh, you know, all this talk about going nowhere is counteracted by later insight that we have a desire to be eternal. Does that make sense? I hope so. Wow, that's quite an explanation. So it says, let's continue to read that. It says, I decided there's nothing better to do than go ahead and have a good time. Do you see where that's underlined? And get the most out of life that we can. That's it. Eat, drink, and make the most of your job. It's a God's gift. There we go. Get the wine, get the TVs, get the dancing floor, get all the things out that make us happy. That's, you know, because we're going to die. So eat, drink, and sometimes this phrase is translated in other places in the text is eat, drink, and be merry. Merry, not M-A-R-Y, that's a person, but M-E-R-R-Y, which is joy, joyfulness. Okay, now what I'm going to do is go to the right-hand side. It says, God restores, he does not let creation go out of existence. Let's go back to our theme of the river into the sea. The sea is still there. And you say, well, yeah, but doesn't it evaporate? But the river comes into it all the time. So God doesn't let the beauty of our existence go out of existence. It's not like you can look at the sky one night and it's got stars and the other night, nope, they're all gone. No, the earthly and cosmic dimension of our life stays the same. You know what they call that? Stardust. This is awkward because I'm going to go off topic. Stardust means that some meteor crashed into the earth, kabam. Like down in Mexico, it's still a great big huge circle there. And then it breaks apart. Then it turns to dust. And that dust turns into, you know, the stuff of the earth. Well, what happens is that God comes along. And go to the book of Genesis. How did he create us? He took some clay, mud, and stuff like that, and he breathed into it. So what he did was he took the dust of the earth and he made our humanity. So what's happening is this dust then can come from all the stuff that makes us up. Where do you think we get the skin and the bones and everything? Well, we got it from food. Where did that food come from? Well, it came from plants and stuff like that. What did happen to them? Well, they died and stuff like that. It fell apart and they mixed in with the stardust. So what we're eating is asparagus that's got a little bit of stardust in it. You say you're making all this up. No, I'm not. I'm very much into this. That what is happening is that we ourselves, can you believe it, are a repository of the cosmos. Oh my goodness! I told people this morning. This little fella comes up to his mom and says, "Mom, what does it mean that we came from dust, and unto dust we go back?" And the mom says, "Well, you know, we're Christians, and we feel, you know, Ash Wednesday came from dust, and unto dust we shall return, and everything like that. So that's what it is, you know. It's dust was, and he says, well, he says, Mom, you better get underneath my bed. He says, because somebody's either coming or going. So anyway, so that's a God restores. Now let's go to the next part, right above number 4 there. Oh, this is really poignant. Humans and animals come to the same end. Humans die, animals die. We all breathe the same air. So there's really no advantage in being human. None. Everything's smoke. We all end up in the same place. We all came from dust and shall end up in dust. Where do we hear that? I put it right there on your page. Ash Wednesday. When they put the ashes on your forehead, it's a reminder to you, came from dust and unto dust you shall return. In other words, you're supposed to slap your soul in the face and say, wake up, to the fact that I want to be close to the Lord because I don't want to have my life end and then go someplace else. I want to be with the Lord. Now we're going to go into chapter 4. And he's got some statements here. These are just typical of Ecclesiastes. How about 4? You see the first part underlined? But luckier than the dead or the living is the person who has never, ever been. How do you know you're lucky in life if you haven't been? You got to have been to know that you were lucky in life. So you can't be really lucky in life, because if you were, that you weren't, then you weren't able to make sense out of the fact that you weren't. So, yeah, well, I can go through that again, but it comes with a little dance and stuff like that. And I have a flower in my, well, anyway, I don't want to get into that. We all got to make a living. So he says, luckier than the dead or the living is the person who's never been. And then at the bottom, he says, why am I working like a dog? He says, I'm doing everything. He says, man, I'm just working myself silly. He says, why am I working like a dog? Never have any fun. Who cares? More smoke, more bad business. Then he says, he goes off on the top. He says, it's better to go into life with a partner, friends, and if you're single, then you're like in our parish. If you're single, well, you got our parish. It's your family. And we consider ourselves here to be together, that we face the same challenges in life, and we put our hopes before the Lord. So now that finishes that page. So I'm going to put that back over here, and I'm going to turn to the next sheet, and you can see that it has 5 and 6. And so if we take a look at chapter 5, God's in charge, not you. Watch your step when you enter God's house. Enter to learn. Don't shoot off your mouth. This sounds like something like Job. Job says, all I want to do is to meet God and to have God look at me in the eye and say, I know you. See, so that's what's going on here. It says, don't be upset if you see the poor kicked around at the bottom. Justice and right violated. Exploitation filters down from one party. There's no end to it. Nothing can be done about it. In other words, we can't improve upon other people's lives. What is. So, for example, on the right-hand side, he says, here's a piece of bad luck I've seen happen. A man hoards far more wealth than is good for him, then he loses it all in a bad business deal. Whoa. Who tells us about that? Jesus of Nazareth, you say. Yes, what did he say in one of his parables? He said this. He says, a man says, Lord, I'm going to build a new silo so I can fill it with grain and a bigger silo than I ever had before. And the Lord says back to him, what are you doing that for? Tonight you're going to die. So that's a parable that Jesus has. It's based on Ecclesiastes. You wonder if Jesus knew Ecclesiastes. Jesus knew every bit of scripture. How do you do that? Yeah, that's a huge amount, because in those days, that's what you did. Mary especially would have had all day long, to sing the Psalms, sing them as she went out to get water, to make bread into donuts and stuff, and to take care of her children and her child, I should say. So now the next part that I have, you can see that I have, when I have a double line, it means it's significant. It says, this is bad luck for sure. Naked he came, naked he went. Come into life, shooting out of mother, naked. And we go back into the tomb, naked. Now here is this double-lined page here, right above 6. This is very important. After looking at the way things are on this earth, here's what I've decided. So now I remember back in the beginning here, I said, how are we to live the days on our earth, number 5? Well, that's this one right here. This is how we are to live. Do you see how, oh, wait a minute, excuse me, I'm back. Oh, yes, got to pat myself on the back. By giving you these kind of outlines here at the beginning, it gives us stuff to look for. So here's one. How are we supposed to live? Well, now you've got the answer to that. See, so he says, how are we to live? Well, this is the best way to live. Here's what I've decided. Take care of yourself. See the dentist. Have a good time. Make the most of whatever job you have for as long God gives you life. That's about it. That's the human lot. Yes, we should make this most out of what God gives. Both the bounty and the capacity to enjoy it. Accepting what's given. Delighting in the work. It's God's gift. God deals out joy in the present, the now. It's useless to brood over how long we might live. Why do you think they put that now in a italic type thing. Well, because it's a way to give emphasis that what we're living is living in the now. We're not living in the past. We're not living in the future. We certainly aren't going to live beyond death. So enjoy what we have right now. Immerse yourself in the now. Actually, you could go to some of these saints or some of the great spiritual writers. Thomas Merton, he was a mystic. Many mystics. Mystics means that you spend your time just kind of abandoning yourself, you know, your pains, your aches, and everything, and then getting merging with God. You feel God is inside you, and you are inside God. Well, Thomas Merton was like that. So he's in the present now. In other words, don't be thinking, well, tomorrow I'm going to have a better day, or yesterday was a better day, or whatever. What do I have tomorrow on my schedule? Well, you know, we got mass in the morning. I go over to our other place because Father Mike's got the mass here. Then I'm going to have a lesson for people from another program that I'm in. Then I'm going to go down to a burial for a man a gentleman, a great, wonderful person, and have the burial in Chicago. Then I'm coming back here. Then I'm going to do some exercise. I've been doing that. Then I have a lecture I'm giving tomorrow night. That'll be the end of my day. So I got it all kind of planned, you know, and now are any of those things greater than the others? Well, I'm going to tell you this. You might think so because of the magnitude of what the stuff you do. But I think it's the attention that you give and the spirituality that you give. In other words, a burial for a family is a very spiritual moment. It continues the process of saying goodbye. Going to Mass is a very spiritual moment. Christ is there with us in word and in food, in the Eucharist. Everything is beautiful and wonderful if we get a chance to share our ideas and our hopes with others. Yes, okay. So if there, I've kind of violated my own thing by talking about what's happening tomorrow, but I just wanted to give you an indication that, like, what am I doing now? Well, I'm doing one of my favorite things, and that's being with you, and being with you so that we can meditate together on these scriptures. You say, wow, have you been blessed because you do a lot of that? Yes, yes. I was going to be a baseball star, or maybe a football quarterback, maybe a rocket scientist. No. No, that's not what I am. What I am is immersed in the now of the words of God. So good for me. Okay. Actually, I was thinking of being an aeronautical engineer. My father was an engineer. My brothers are all into that kind of stuff. So, but it never took off. It was stuck on the tarmac. Now we're going to chapter 6. Things are bad. And he does. He says this smoke idea comes back. You know, the things are not like visible in their rawness. They are covered over with impotence. Say a couple have scores of children, live a long, long life, but never enjoy themselves, even though they end up with a big funeral. Is that incredible? But yeah, the thing that came into my mind was go back to the 1933 and seeing a mobster being buried, and you have like $5,000 worth of flowers in the car following the hearse and stuff like that. Stuff that's going to be wasted, you know. And it said about big funeral, says a stillborn baby gets the better deal. Oh my God, this is a sadness in my life. I've seen so much of this, you know, with parents. I mean, families I know that, you know, just were so anxious to have a child, and then finding out, you know, on the day of birth or sometime before, the baby has died through natural causes. Even if someone lived 1,000 years, nothing. It says we work to feed our appetite. Meanwhile, our souls go hungry. Isn't that incredible? How did that sneak in there? That our souls are hungry. You see how that is in the midst of all this kind of stuff about how bad off things are. You get one sense of truth there, which is our souls go hungry, which means that maybe there's a time when our souls will be fed. Now I'm going to go on to the back side of that page, and you can see up in the upper left-hand corner, it looks like a 3. No, that's the number 8. It got hit by a truck. I'm sorry. So you can fill that in. That's a chapter 8. You say we're already up to chapter 8. I'm telling you, we are. And so here's what I'm going to do. We have now completed we started at 5 after, so we've got 45 minutes. We've got half of our program over. So we're going to take about 2-3 minute break. If you want to stretch, how about those ads on TV for looking at the mirror and you do exercises and stuff like that. So if you need anything, or if you just want to kind of relax a bit, do you think we have any questions or anything like that? People can talk to us. I see Pam can talk to us, and Luann. Do you have any questions or any thoughts about what's happening here so far?
No special thoughts, or just taking it in right now.
If you ever come up with anything, you can also feel free to put it in the chat as well.
Oh yeah, you can put it in the chat. Yeah. So what you're saying is you're immersed in the now. So very good for you. You're living out, what Ecclesiastes is telling you to do. Do any of the others have any thoughts on what's taking place? Well, let's get back to work. We've had just a minute kind of break on things, because we are going to finish this tonight, and we also have some other articles to look at. So now let's go to chapter 8. And they tell you, this. I like this translation, because they tell you a little paragraph reminders. Like it says here, one fate for everybody. In other words, nobody's going to be better off or worse off, because we're all going to die the same way. He says, I'm still convinced that the good life is reserved for the person who fears God. Now, fear, that's a bad word. That gets into the scripture. They always say fear. And it's not fear in the sense of cowering in the corner, just with your hands up saying, oh, no, God, don't hurt me. No, just the opposite. When it says you fear God, it means that you have a reverence for God. You have an adoration of God. You have a giving over yourself to the beauty of God. So fearing God doesn't mean to have fear. It means to be in the awesomeness of God. Even a better word might be awareness. See, a person who is aware of God, who lives reverently in his presence, and that the evil person will not experience a good life. So no matter how many days he lives. So this is a kind of these are thoughtful things. That's why some people read this book and they think it's the greatest book ever written, because they're not into a relationship with Jesus as such. Herman Melville, who wrote, Moby Dick, he thought this was the best book ever. Thoreau, who went, off into the New England forest and stuff like that, little pond, his pond that he had there, and he thought this was the greatest book going. See, it's kind of like a meditation book. If you say that my life isn't worth living beyond this, how do I examine my life now? What do I do? Kind of think over it for yourself. Am I doing what I could be doing and should be doing? He says, anyway, here's something happens all the time, makes no sense. Good people get what's coming to the wicked. Bad people get what's coming good. I tell you, it makes no sense. It's all smoke. So I'm all for just going ahead and having a good time. Eat and drink well, have a good time. Compensation for the struggle for survival these few years God gives on earth. So there's no vision of heaven here, that if we do the right work in our life here, if we take up our vocation here, that we will have an entree into eternal life. For example, the great churchman, John Henry Newman, now a saint, has a famous quote. All the time people use it. God has created me to do him some definite service. He has committed a work to me that he has not committed to another. I have my mission. I never may know it in this life, but I shall be told in the next. I am a link in a chain, a bond of connections between persons. God has not created me for naught. See how that prayer goes? That's a vision of heaven. It says, God has created something for me to do. When I do it, then I'm going to make a link in a chain. And what's that chain? It's like Jacob's ladder. It goes up to heaven and comes back down to us, goes up to heaven and back down to us. So that's a beautiful statement there. Now we're in chapter 9. In chapter 9, he said in the second paragraph, is one fate for everybody, the righteous, the wicked, the good, the bad, the nice, the nasty, worshipers, non-worshipers, committed and uncommitted. Don't you like the way this book is translated? I like that. It's got a sense, it kind of flows right along. If you have biblical language, I'm not putting it down, but because I might get smacked with lightning. No, what it has is a kind of a togetherness, kind of like these are the words we use, the committed and the uncommitted, the outrageous. So Everything's lumped together in one fate. Then he has a phrase down at the bottom. Life leads to death. He has a phrase down there. It kind of got cut off. He says, it's better to be a living dog is better than a dead lion. In other words, the lion is like the king of the jungle. Oh, big deal. Where's the lion? Oh, he's dead. So it's better to be. Oh my goodness! Zoom says you're participant. Okay, I don't know. It went back off. There was something came inside and went back off. It flowed into the sea. Now we're on the upper right-hand side. He says, the dead know nothing and get nothing. They're a minus no one remembers. Their loves, their hates, yes, even their dreams are long gone. There's not a trace of them left. This is all there is. See, what's our kind of program say? What's next? The reason for our hope? What's the answer here? This is all there is. You ain't getting no more. That's all you got is your life here. I put down there, what's the Catholic response to this? That the dead know nothing and get nothing. Their loves, their hates, their dreams are gone. I like ceremonies that have the litany of the saints because it kind of reminds us. Usually they go to the early saints of the church, like the first 300 years. Then they go to the Middle Ages, the saints of knowledge and stuff like that. Then they go to the mystics, especially the women mystics, Hildegard of Bingen and others. Hildegard of Bingen. Did you know that the British have an expression? The people have an expression to go on a binge. Kind of.
Mhm.
I know a college student wouldn't know that. At Notre Dame, they go to the library, and so anyway, a binge means you go on a binge. You know where that comes from? It comes from the British sailors who were up and down the Rhine River with their ships, and they stopped at the town of Bingen, B-I-N-G-E, and it's on the west bank of the Nile River, or not the Nile, the river flowing up to the sea there, the Rhine River. Okay, see, I'm just a font of useless knowledge.
Not at all.
Yeah, that's right. It's just empty as can be. So I like the litany of saints because what we do is we honor them, and it's almost like we bring them into our existence. We had baptisms here last Sunday, 5 of them, one set of twins, and we use their names and the saints that come with them and stuff like that to accompany us. So we pray to the holy women, holy men of before. So we have a response to that. So continue to read there. He says, each day is God's gift. It's all you get in exchange for the hard work of staying alive. Make the most of each one. Whatever turns up, grab it. It's your last and only chance at it. There's neither work to do nor thought to think in the company of the dead, where you're certainly most certainly headed. Oh, God. Just enjoy it now, because there's going to be no work where you're headed. Oh. This book has a charm to it in some sense. Now, what I'm going to do is that we finished that chapter 9, and I'm going to put that page among our ones that we've read, and I come to the last page, not of our set tonight because we got the other things to do, but this page that has Ecclesiastes on one side, see that? And then on the other side, it has chapter 12. You see that? This side over here actually is from the book that we're using as a translation called The Message. It has this contemporary translation that I've talked about so much that it puts it into our language. It's gray because the book had a gray kind of color to it, but it printed up okay. Then over here we have chapter 12. You say, what happened to the other chapters? We're not reading everything. We're just reading the things that I've isolated for us. If you want to read something along with the part that I gave you a page on how to read Ecclesiastes. You could also read, if you're interested, this reading from Ecclesiastes. That's why I put it in there, because it comes from the Catholic Bible here. It's the part, if I opened up this book to Ecclesiastes, I would find this page. Except for the fact it's not that Bible, but the other Bible. Okay. I'm confusing enough. Let's go to chapter 12, which is the last chapter. The first thing you notice is it goes down to a line that goes across. See that? That's the end of the original book. the way I'm interpreting this book and many others. That book 12 goes all the way down to that line, and that's the end of the book. And you say to yourself, but what happened about the other stuff that's there? I'm going to say that comes from a later author. The later author put this onto the book because I think he had the same, I use the masculine, I think he had the same unrest with this book talking about that we're going nowhere. So let's see what this book has for us, chapter 12. Honor and enjoy your creator while you're still young, before the years take their toll and your vigor wanes. Oh my goodness, what a description here. Your vision dims, the world blurs. Winter years keep you close to the fire. In old age, your body no longer serves you well. Muscles slacken, grip weakens, joints stiffen. Shades are pulled down to the world. You can't come with will. Things grind to a halt. Oh, man. If I had the energy, I'd respond to that, but I don't because I'm old. What a way to end the book by saying you're a leaf on a tree in November. Oh no, the first wind that comes and off you go. So yeah, you're well on your way to eternal rest while your friends make plans for your funeral. Oh, I don't mean to make light of all it's very serious topics, but notice this eternal rest. I have for most of my priestly life objected to the liturgy's use of that phrase. Now they are in eternal rest, as if a heavenly kingdom is swinging in a hammock with a Mai Tai looking out at the beach and seeing the sun come up and the sun go down, and that's your rest. That makes no sense whatsoever. Heaven, if it is a place of rest, is a hell. Hell could be where you're actually at a place and at a space forever, and nothing happens. There's no growth. There's no more joy. It's just the same old, same old. Somebody was walking through the famous place in Italy where the mountain went off and blew lava all the way down and covered a whole town. And when it covered the town, it actually came into rooms like this and would freeze everything in that room. So where the body was, there might be just an empty space now because that all turned into gas. Well, they found on the wall, one of the walls was written this: Crambe repetita. That's Latin for same old cabbage. This guy's going home after a hard day's work on the pier, and he's waiting for his supper that his lovely, adorable wife has cooked for him. The same old cabbage that we have day in and day out, the same old crambe repetita. Ugh. So if that's what heaven is that you are in non-existence, that you just are completely at rest, then forget it. That is certainly not heaven. So, and then he says, the spirit returns to God who first breathed it. Well, that's from the book of Genesis. We have that in Genesis where we have, God picked up the material stuff of nature and he breathed into it. And by breathing into it, he brought it to life. So. Let's see. God, let the earth bring forth all kind of creatures. Let's make man in our own image, after our own likeness. He created man in his image, in the divine image. He created them, male and female. He created them. Be fertile and multiply. And then when we get to the other creation story, it also has this idea that God has put the very soul into us. And for example, chapter 2, verse 7, the Lord God formed man out of the clay of the ground and blew into his nostrils the breath of life. And so man became a living being. Of course, that is what we call poetic mythology or mythopoetic thought. You say, oh, don't use that word myth because it means false. No, myth means a fuller interpretation of what is real. So you're walking along and you see a cave. And in that cave, you say, well, that's a organic. In other words, it has nothing to it. The mytho part means it's a myth. What is the myth, for example, on the top of Mount Carmel, after which our parish is named? It is the cave of Elijah. So you walk into that cave, you're a Muslim, you're a Jew, you're a Christian. You walk into that cave and all of a sudden you're taken over by the spirit of Elijah. Because what you've done is you've gone into the mythology, that is the spirituality of the place. Doesn't mean it doesn't exist, that Elijah's presence is there. I'm way off track, but that can happen. So now, so you see what's happening here is that the book ends. The words of the wise prod us to live well. They're like nails hammered home, holding life together. They're given by God, the one shepherd. It's an interesting way to close it. Last word being shepherd. You know, we never had that thought before, did we, in this account? That, you know, like a shepherd to a sheep is personal. Do you know how the shepherds have to work? I'm into, you know, I just have oodles of incoherent and useless knowledge. And one of them is, if you're a shepherd in Israel at the time of Jesus or other places, you have to clear out the nostrils of the sheep as they go into their sleep at nighttime. You put them into a circular, you know, place so the wolves don't get them and stuff like that. But you have to clean them because they can't do it themselves. They can't snort enough. So you have to go around with your hands and clean out their nostrils so that they're able to breathe enough during the night. Otherwise, you know, it's a terrible night for them. So to say that's a shepherd, a shepherd's love, you know, our great Pope Francis says that, yeah, let them, nobody's good as a minister unless you can smell the sheep. You smell like sheep. You are a shepherd. That's an interesting way to end the book. Now what happens is we get some other words here. And I believe, just like our ones before, that these words are a statement by another author written later and appended to the book so that it does something about God's presence in our life. It says, but regarding anything beyond this, dear friend, go easy. There's no end to the publishing of books, and constant study wears you out, so you're no good for anything. The last and final word is this: fear God. And that is, in other words, be in awe of God. Do what he tells you. And that's it. Eventually, God will bring everything that we do out into the open and judge it according to his hidden intent, whether it's good or evil. I put down there Matthew 25 because that's a famous statement of Jesus. Remember how he says the sheep are on this side and the goats are on this side. You know, the sheep are the ones who saw me when I was naked, when I was ill, when I was in prison, when I was in need of comfort, and they came to me. I was thirsty, as Jesus says from the cross. Then on the other side, they say, well, when did we see you like that? Because we don't do that. You know? Now, wow. Here's what has just happened. We have finished our study of Ecclesiastes. Why did we pick out this book when we're supposed to be talking about eternity? Because of the fact, and we're going to have to talk about a lot of other books too. We have 13 books we're going to cover in the next 4 or 5 weeks just by taking snippets. And the reason is we want to see in the human soul whether there's a development toward communing with God in a heavenly existence. Can we do that? In other words, having like an intimation, a desire, a hope, a dream of what heaven would be like before the resurrection of Jesus? Because the resurrection of Jesus answers it all, does it not? Now, let me throw this idea out to you. Some people have said that the book of Ecclesiastes is the question mark to the rest of the Bible, which is the answer. I'll say it one more time. We'll use color, black for emptiness. The book of Ecclesiastes is empty, blackness, so that we can see the brilliance of light, which is a symbol for the heavenly world. So in other words, the black is the emptiness and the light is the antidote. So you have, what I'm saying is a question, is there meaning to our lives? And the rest of the Bible is the answer, absolutely, to the point of eternity. Okay, now, we have actually covered quite a bit in enough time. I am very impressed with you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Welcome. Yeah, this made sense. I hope this all made sense to you. You know, well, I mean, not the reality of what they're saying, but I mean, the sense to you that we're interpreting a book that gives us this. You probably didn't think that this kind of a book existed. In fact, a lot of people wondered, how did this book get in the Bible? Just like the Song of Songs was the same thing, because it had 8 marriage poems with sexuality and things. How'd that get in the Bible? And because of the fact that I firmly believe that they allowed this into the Bible because of the fact that it kind of complements the rest of the Bible. We got to start from absolute scratch, and that's what this does. Now, the next thing that you have are pages, and these are pages like this. And these are from articles. And what you might do in looking at these articles is read them on your own. I've underlined some things. See what you get out of them. There are 2 articles that I do not have annotations for, and I would like you to read them, and I'll get them in a minute. We're going to spend time on this material from Peter Kreeft. Do you have that?
Yes. Okay.
It was on the back side of our last page. Do you have that? The back side of the last page. Okay. So now let's take a look at this. Peter Kreeft is a fabulous author. He's written 70 books probably. I have a whole bunch of them. We're going to use a lot of his material when we get in future time to what heaven is like. Isn't that a big question we all have? What is heaven like? And we have these kind of childish views, of angels bopping around, and you can play tennis, you can go golfing, or this, that, the other thing. And so let's start with Peter Kreeft. He was I believe he was Calvinist. I could be wrong on that. A very strict religionist, and he was studying, and he studied to debunk Christianity, and of course, when he got into it, found out that that's the truth, and so he became a Christian and Catholic. And what he's done is he is a professor up at in Boston. I believe he's signed some books over to me, which is nice of him. Let's start to read there on page 26. He's got a book called The 3 Philosophies of Life. Now, this is a little bit of it takes time to get into this. 3 books of life in his book. 3 philosophies of life. One he calls hell, where nothing makes sense. The other is purgatory, where we live by suffering. And the third is a heaven, where we live by joy. So there's 3 modes of life. One is emptiness, another is pain, and another is absolute joy. So the book of Ecclesiastes is the first book he studies. And notice there, see, we're on pages 28, 29. See how he's got the headlines there? Ecclesiastes, life is vanity. So he's going to describe the book as hell. And he's going to give us a way to interpret the book. And so those are the things I've underlined. So let's take a look at this. The Hebrew word means literally a chasing after wind, a grasping after shadows, a wild goose chase. And there is no wild goose. There's no end, only an end. Now he uses Greek words there, telos, which means that the purpose. What is the purpose? Somebody say, what's the end result of that? So in John's Gospel, chapter 13, verse 1 and 2 there, he says, and Jesus loved those who were his own to the end. And some people translate that end in their mind as till he died on the cross. That's not it. The word that they use in Greek is telos. Teleology means the final ages. So the purpose of Jesus' death was to resurrect. The end means finished, like if you see a movie, especially in France, fini, finished, meaning it's over. So let's turn to the right-hand side. You can see I have 2 paragraphs that I outlined for us. So let's see what they say. Nada. Spanish for nothing. It's the word St. John of the Cross. Greatest of the mystics used to describe God, the sheer abyss of pure being beyond all infinite beings, beyond some things. He called God todo y nada, everything and nothing. How can you possibly say God is nothing? Easily, because take the word meaning this, God is no thing. So we cannot say that God is something that we understand, because everything that we use to identify God is so far short. Let's take the Our Father who art in heaven. Oh, so God is our Father. No, it's better off to say God is not our Father than God is our Father. Why? Because our idea of fatherhood is so limited compared to who God is. This is making some sense to you? That we cannot use words to describe Jesus. In fact, the very atheist who says I can't describe God is right on target, because God is no thing. See, so he's pure being, and we are finite beings. And so God is so full of being, he's no thing. So for a nihilist, that is a person who doesn't believe in real meaning, being is so empty of God that it is nothing. For the theistic mystic, nothingness is only meant for being. For the nihilist, being is only a name for nothingness. So what he's doing is he's slapping the nihilist in the face by saying, when you say there is nothing in life, you mean it. When you talk to the mystic and say there's nothing, like you say absolutely there's no thing. You know, this world is not a thing for me. It is an absolute experience of spirituality. The point is this, second paragraph. Without God, no, not just without God. For the author of Ecclesiastes speaks frequently of God. Without faith in God, no, even for that, for the author has faith in God. In fact, in unquestioning faith, never does he doubt God's existence. Rather, without the kind of faith in God that is larger than life, and therefore worth dying for, and therefore worth living for, without a faith that means trust and hope and love, without a lived love affair with God, life is vanity of vanities, the shadow of a shadow, a dream within a dream. There you have it. The reason why this book is in the scriptures is because it tells us that the complete opposite of the meaninglessness of the Ecclesiastes is found in the absolute fullness of love and life in Jesus the Lord. So if you have a love affair with God, you are saying no to the book of Ecclesiastes. Ecclesiastes means nothing. And the completion of everything in life is to have a love of God and God's accepting God's love for us. Now turn the page. That page is aside, and we come up to the next page. And the next page is page 28. This is the message of Ecclesiastes for a Christian. You can see why I printed this up for you, because it gives kind of a coherence to the stuff that we're doing. This is the message. It says the world's purest gold is only dung without Christ. But with Christ, the basest metal is transformed into the purest gold. So you walk along and all of a sudden you see a rusty nail. Well, it belongs to Christ. It becomes gold. The hope of alchemy can come true. There's a philosopher's stone that travels inside of us, that we are the rusty nail, and all till we meet Jesus. And he makes of us, the rusty nail, a perfection in life. Paul picks up on this. What does Paul say? He uses the idea of a cup. And he takes a cup, like you might have a cup, okay? And he calls it a chipped cup. You go up to your cottage in northern Wisconsin, your fishing cottage, and you go there every once a year, and you find some of the stuff you had when you were a kid, and there's a coffee cup there. It's got veins going through it because it's old and it's broken and everything like that, and a little chip here, and somebody might hurt your tooth. Yes, chipped cup. That's what Paul thinks we are. We are incomplete. Jesus the Lord is a chalice, and we are a chipped cup. And that doesn't bother us, because the fact that it's a truth. It's a truth of who we are. And it's the truth of who we want to be. So, anyway, this is life's great paradox. Solomon does not know its positive half, but he knows its negative half. This is the message of the most famous and adamant atheist 20th century literature, especially in his greatest work, the writer Sartre. The work is Nausea. I studied Sartre under a French friend of Sartre at Georgetown University. I was in their philosophy program. Anyway, and he was a great atheist. Now listen what he has to say here. See the quote down below about from Sartre. See if we can figure this out. God does not exist, Sartre is saying, because it's right. He's an atheist. He says we have to face all the consequences of this. The existentialist, that's what they call it, is a person who knows existence but doesn't know any meaning, is strongly opposed to a certain kind of secular ethic which would like to abolish God with the least possible expense. So in other words, what he's talking about is we don't want to pay attention to people who kind of argue about God and say, well, there's no God because I think him out of existence. The existentialist, on the contrary, thinks it's very distressing that God does not exist because all possibility of finding values in heaven of ideas disappear with him. There can be no a priori good since there is no infinite and perfect consciousness to think it. So let's go over that very slowly here. A priori means something happening before. In other words, everything is born with meaning. So there's nothing born with a good since there's no infinite and perfect consciousness to think it. What is that infinite and perfect consciousness? That would be God. So God does not think us to be significant because there is no God. So nowhere is it written that good exists, that we must be honest, that we must not lie, because in fact, we're not playing where there's only men. Dostoevsky said, if God didn't exist, everything would be permissible. That's the very starting point of existentialism. What does existential mean? Our lives are guided by freedom. We have total freedom where there's no restrictions. You can't put them on us. So I know I'm going very fast through that, so because I think that's enough. I'm going to take the next part on the right-hand side by Peter Kreeft. Of course, not all of life is in vain in the short run. Solomon knows that. There's the rub. Short-run purpose, no compensation for long-range purposelessness. Men live not just in the present, but also in the future. We live by hope. People without hope are pushed. In other words, they got to be pushed into action. We are pulled because hope is ahead of us. In other words, we're like walking up to the top of the mountain. We want to be up the top of the mountain. So the person who's into the kind of attitude of our Ecclesiastes, you have to be pushed from behind to get up the mountain. Oh God, you keep pushing us. No, we want to get up there, so we're free. So we live by instinct that we want to get free. Then he takes a smack at Marx and Freud and Skinner, all atheists. Now I'm going to go on the backside. And this is actually going to finish us up for the evening. I'll just make some more comments about the other stuff to read. Take a look at this backside, and you can see what it is a what they call a syllogism. A syllogism is, like I presented to you earlier, all toil is under the sun. See where that is? All under the sun is vanity. Therefore, all toil is vanity. In other words, A is to B as B is to C. Therefore, A is to C. Those are letters. So once again, all toil is under the sun. Now, is that true? That all of our work, everything that we do, is under the sun, meaning on planet Earth? Yeah, that's kind of true. All toil, all human work is under the sun. I got that underlined there. And how about the stuff that we do under the sun? Does it do anything for us? No, goes nowhere. We can build a silo, but it's gonna, we're gonna die. See, death, that means that anything that we do is gone. That's what it means to say vanity. We're dead. So therefore, all toil is vanity. In other words, why should we work? Because we're gonna die. Now, is there anything that we do that goes beyond this earth? And the answer from our Catholic faith, yes. We commune with God, we love God, we revere God, we want to be like God, we want to live with God, we want God to live with us. So the entire conclusion of the book of Ecclesiastes, that because we die, there is nothing, becomes for us just the opposite. Because we live in Christ, we live forever. Let me say that again. Because we live in Christ, we live forever. So this syllogism, all toil is under the sun, all under the sun is a vanity, therefore all toil is a vanity. No, there is a human work, a toil that goes way beyond this life. And that is eternal life. So we're constructing ourselves with everything that we make in this life. At the bottom part that I've got a line next to, we ourselves, souls, characters, destined for eternity. We are the kingdom of heaven, or the answer to Solomon. Well, with that, I'm just going to close here because we put in a long night. You can, I know that this is very heavy reading, this Creek article, so I'm just going to, but I'd rather, have it for you than that. The next pages have on the backside, an account from America Magazine, Knowns. And this might be for you if you're interested in what's happening to our church in terms of the membership of our church, the Catholic Church. Choosing our religion, the spiritual lives of American knowns. What are knowns? Knowns are people who do not have a specific faith. They're about 25% of the population does not have a specific faith. They are called knowns. So you might want to read this and see what it has to say for us. Now you say, well, I don't feel up to it. Well, then don't. And that's why we have remote things on for our TV, so you don't have to put up with it. And the last one is, this is another one. He says, don't believe in God, lie to your children, because they're going to be better off with God in their lives than they're not. So if you are a sluggard and you've given up on your faith and stuff like that, at least tell your children that there is a God and make them religious so that you've saved their lives. The opposite is going on now. We're people of faith, but we find out that, well, we can't pass it on to our children as well. How about this? 25% of the population in the United States are knowns, that is people without a specific kind of religious instinct.
Got a few of them.
Okay.
Thank you.
Well, now, Stephanie's been with us all night here, and she prepared all these materials, so we just want to thank her for doing that. And for,
Thank you.
This is, in fact, this is her computer we're using, and so there you go. We appreciate it. Now, here's what's going to happen next week. Next week, we're going to go into Isaiah, the most famous prophet of the Old Testament, and see what he has to say about God and us. Some of these things are quite beautiful that we're going to say. See, this is different than some of these usual studies where we're studying, in those studies, we're studying history. We're studying, how to interpret a parable or a gospel or, what we're doing with here is we're actually reading kind of abstract stuff that doesn't have like, a history to it. I mean, there is some history, the Babylonian captivity and stuff like that, but these are spirituality moments. So it's quite a jump for us. Anyway, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Father.
Oh, you're very welcome.